So I was really curious this year to try and do speakers by Skype. Ideally, if this works, which I think it is working so far, next year we can bring in more speakers who can't physically attend. So Kat Silverman is a Blackhawks contributor for the Athletic NHL, focusing on the Chicago Blackhawks. A goaltender and journalist, she has coached at Arizona Coyotes Department of Hockey Development and USA Hockey, and is a regular contributor at In Goal magazine. Her work has also been featured at NHL.com, Yahoo Sports, and as an alumnus of St. John's University, Kat studied public relations and business law before getting into hockey analytics. She's been working goaltending for the last 6 years. So welcome.
So this year I moved around from, I used to cover the NHL as a whole. When it came time to figure out what I was doing for this particular season, I was talking with my editor at The Athletic, and we came up with the idea for a concept called Behind the Save. It's a weekly column where I look at the Blackhawks. I've also looked at a couple other teams. I've looked at the Wild, the Leafs, the Sharks, both Pennsylvania teams, and sort of look at the physical aspects behind the goaltending, not just the numbers behind it. So I'm going to pull up, here we go, let me see how well this works. Here we go. All right, so this is Behind the Save. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about goaltending statistics, visual analysis, and how they sort of relate to the field today. What is goaltending? Obviously, most of you guys know what goaltending is as a concept, but when it comes to statistics, analysis, the numbers behind it, it's a little bit different from what we see from skaters. When it comes to goaltending, the stats are a little bit more team-oriented than they are for skaters. If a skater has an off night, let's say Milan Lucic doesn't score per game. I know he's now on 29 games and counting, but for the first game, he doesn't score. An off night for him is no stats. An off night for a goaltender, and on the other hand, his stats go down. They actually sort of become negatives. And so we end up with these stats that, even if a skater can have a poor night and it doesn't drag down his overall average any more than just an average night might. For a goaltender, a poor night, an average night, and a good night are all very influential when it comes to his actual statistics, and that can be influenced by the team around him as well. Beyond that, the perception of a poor night for goaltenders when it comes to statistics is a little bit harder to sort of figure out because there's a lot of parity when it comes to goaltending. Who currently has the highest save percentage in the NHL? It's a .934, and who currently has the lowest? When I went to put this in here, I thought I knew who it was. It's actually Carter Hutton for the Blues has the highest, and Scott Darling has the lowest. He has an .889. In an average game with about 28 shots against, that's a difference in give or take 1 goal allowed. So obviously the difference between that and the difference between a very good skater and a very bad skater, that's marginal. And of the 48 goaltenders with 22 games so far this season, only 3 of them are with Scott Darling. With that 889, I believe one has like an 892, Chad Johnson's one of them. The rest of them have a 900 or above. If you look at percentages when it comes to anything else, if it comes to grades at school, if the lowest kid in your class has an 89% for their grade, that's pretty good. But for goaltending, that's obviously not. So that sort of creates this need for a stylistic comparison as well, because we can't necessarily tell who the best and who the worst are just based on their numbers. So this is a goal from the Chicago Blackhawks. Played a game on Thursday night, and I actually had to completely rewrite my column for that night.
Josh,
my columns go out.
I think we're behind on the slides here.
Are we behind on slides?
Looks like we're updating. It's not sharing the slideshow, it's sharing your desktop.
Oh, that's really weird. Can you guys see it just fine right now?
You can see your mouse.
It's not full screen.
You can see that though?
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm gonna leave it like that for now. Apologies for the technical stuff with it. But when it comes to what I've been originally saying was the Black had this game on Tuesday night, and initially I was going to be talking about JF Rubin. Had done really well in his first start, and we were going to add in, a save here and there from his Thursday night game. And anyone who watched that game knows that it was a disaster. The Blackhawks allowed 7 goals. 6 of them were for Bay. One of them was for Anton Forsberg in the last 3. It was a mess. And so we ended up having to completely change it up. And every single goal that was scored against them was one of those. Let's see if this will play for you guys. Obviously, there are some goals to goals where you can't allow. Begin with, like, he counter rotates against himself out of crease, sort of the second shot that into. So that particular goal, the spot is huge. Wow. Hold on. You guys seeing my text right now? Or? Cool. Alright. Can you guys see when I change slides?
Yep.
Yeah.
Let me see. Is the audio okay now? Okay. All right. So for this particular save, I don't know if you guys caught this or not. That was a very stop and through that, and obviously that's something. You still listen to me?
It might. I mean, I might be interested to see if it has something to do with the screen share and all those toys. I don't know. I don't know if she thinks the wire connection or what connection. It's kind of hard to say. It's like a small screen.
I do this for if you need to be confident, there's so many other classes that are actually made for like that's good for
Does this help hearing me correctly?
No. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you just fine.
Okay, no, it's still cutting in and out for the audio.
You switched to just audio.
Yeah, but we don't have slides.
Oh, she hasn't set it down.
Normal. You can.
Yeah, it's easy to say.
I can always read slides. There aren't too many that have actual visuals beyond that one. I can basically read them and then do a Q&A if the audio.
Let's try just audio.
Just audio? Okay. Did that help at all?
For now.
For now, that's helping?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me try talking a little bit and see if that helps at all. So, Josh, do you know what the last thing that was clearly heard is? Or was there anything that was clearly heard?
We just saw the video.
Yeah, back when you were showing the video on the 2 saves.
The video was the one that started to cut out?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, the summarization of that is when it comes to the goals themselves, a goaltender can allow 7 goals in a game, and the majority of them can be his fault. So clearly, that's a bad game for him. I know about a week before that, Henrik Lundqvist had a game where I believe he also allowed 7 goals. The majority of those were not his fault. So when you look at the stylistic comparison in certain games, that can help where the numbers necessarily sometimes can't for a goaltender, just because, you know, you can score a goal, and whether you score it well or not, you scored the goal. When it comes to the saves, if your team is scoring on you, if your team is screening you, that can severely affect your ability to do your job correctly. And ultimately, for a goaltender, that helps with sustainability. You know, if you know whether or not your goaltender is able to make those saves again down the road, it can help you decide, you know, whether you want to buy him out, you want to trade him to the Calgary Flames, where he'll do very well. That's basically the eye test conference. Can tell you if the save is team error, goaltender error. It can tell you how repeatable a mistake is too. I know on Twitter this morning, posted a tweet of Kristen Perry. Basically looked like the controller had disconnected. He's turned around facing his goal. That's even not a goaltender. That's not fair to do. But that's not a very repeating mistake. Unless he has a bad habit of turning around to watch left.
Going on audio only, why don't we just get her to call you and you put her on the mic?
What do you mean?
Well, she's just doing audio right now, so if she just called you
On where?
and on your phone, and then you just kept the phone on speaker and put it up.
Don't think so. I don't know. How you doing, Kat?
I'm doing good. Do you want me to try screen sharing while I'm on audio so that you guys can see the PowerPoint but not? Or do you think that might mess with the connection again?
We can try it.
All right, let me quickly try that.
Cut our video as well. Yeah.
All right, can you guys see that okay?
Yep.
All right, so this picture is the one that I was referring to. This is Kristen Berry making a very bad mistake. You know, goals were there, that's on him. But that's not great. That's not for people. Are we doing okay with me hearing?
No, audio's still cutting out.
Audio's cutting out? All right. So I guess that is the screen sharing that's doing that. If you want, I can pull up each slide, show it to you guys for a second, and then I can pull it away again. But for the most part, the slides are just bullet points from here on out. So it's up to you.
So can you say that again?
From here on out, my slides are just bullet points. So I can show the rest of them one by one.
Are you still there?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know what's working right now, so I don't know if you wanna.
Here, can you hear me all right?
Right now, yes.
Okay, so I think it's once we try screen share.
Josh, do you think she could send the PowerPoint to you as PDF or something, so you can just put it on the screen here, and then we can just do audio with her?
Yeah, but the setup time is the problem. Yeah. How are you doing on your end?
I'm doing all right.
It's working for you? You can hear us fine without any issues?
Oh yeah, I can hear you guys just fine.
Just maybe have her narrate. Maybe just have her narrate. No?
I don't know.
Just finish it without screen sharing.
Alright, let's do our best to try and finish without the screen sharing.
All right. And you guys can hear me just fine?
Yep.
Sometimes.
All right. Testing, can you hear me?
Yep. Right now, yeah.
Yep. Okay. So to sort of wrap that up, the eye test confirmation, if you use that, it can help you sort of determine when a save is repeatable, when a goal is repeatable, when certain goaltenders are hitting trends in their style of play. Using that, you can tell which goaltenders are overusing certain things. You can identify counter rotation. That's when a goaltender moves his lower half towards the save and keeps his torso facing the wrong direction, sort of. You can tell if a guy is using reverse VH in the wrong place. Reverse VH is a form of post integration. It's when a goaltender puts his skate up against the post, flattens his pad up against the ice, and sort of pushes off to go across his crease. It can help you sort of figure out which guys are using those in the right places, which guys aren't. The bad news with that, of course, is you have certain guys who look good, but maybe their timing is off, their tracking is off, their personal instincts in goal are off. So even though their style of play looks very good, they allow a lot of goals. And then you have other guys any of you guys who follow me on Twitter, who read my work, know it's a very poorly kept secret. I'm not a fan of Ben Bishop's play. I think he does very well in spite of himself. But once you hit 3, 4, 5 seasons of that, my eye test is telling me that he's not very good, but his numbers are telling me that he is. So when you use that eye test, even with goaltenders, you hit this point where your personal preferences with goaltending are going to sort of create this form of bias against guys who are probably very good. They just aren't your personal style of goaltender. So some good stats to use, to help sort of eliminate some of those biases in the stats without losing your overall ability to judge the goaltender. Look at their goals saved above average. That sort of tells you, with the number of shots they've faced in their number of games, how many more saves they've made or how many less they've made than a league average goaltender would sort of make in that situation. You can look at quality strike percentage. That tells how many games a goaltender either has a .917 save percentage in all situations, or has, I believe it's an .887 save percentage in all situations with 2 or fewer goals allowed. You can look at their contextual stats, look at their high danger, their low danger, their medium danger. if you push Manny on Corsica, hopefully at some point he'll bring back rush shots against and rebound shots against. That can tell you how often a goaltender's, getting peppered by these shots that are really difficult to stop. You can look at their rolling averages. I believe that is still on Corsica. It can tell you, whether a goaltender has huge high peaks, huge low dips, or whether they're very consistent throughout their season. That sort of goes along with their quality start percentage. If a guy has a 53% quality start percentage or better, he's considered to be good. If a guy has like 63% quality start percentage, that means that he's giving his team a 77% or better chance to win 60% of games. If they're not winning 63% of his starts, that shows it's kind of a team thing, not a him thing. Some bad stats to use though, don't look at their wins. I believe it was a couple years back, a scout was talking at an analytics conference I was speaking at, and we asked, what's the stat that you like to look at for younger goaltenders? And he said, I like to look at their wins. I like to see how many wins they get. And that's how you end up with, I like to call it the Zach Fucale factor. I'd love to see him succeed eventually, but at the moment, Zach Fucale is a goaltender who did very well win-wise. Obviously, he won a World Junior Championship. He has a gold there. But his stats were never really above a 900, and he's now struggling to make it in the pros. If you look at goals against average, that's also a difficult one to use. Most of them are going to be within a goal of each other. So that's not going to tell you a whole lot about how good the goaltender himself is, but more about the team itself. And goalie, that's going to tell you about how many points your goaltender has helped your team earn throughout the year. And obviously, if he's on a very stacked team, it's going to be more difficult for him to be earning those points for them. A guy who's really carrying his team Carey Price style. So that's really it from me. I can take questions. I'm sorry that you guys can't see my lovely face sitting in my bed hiding from my 2-year-old.
So yeah, we have a couple times for a couple questions. I'm not sure. See if she can hear us on the microphone. So sorry. Just a second.
I'm just yelling.
I don't know if she can hear though.
Okay.
I can hear.
Hi, Kat. Thanks for the presentation. My question is, when we talk about styles for goaltenders, do you think there's any credibility to the fact that certain goaltender styles play well to certain teams? So I know, for example, Jonathan Quick, by the eye test, is either a top-tier goalie or one of the worst goaltenders in the league, depending on who you ask. But for LA in particular, it seemed that whatever skill set he brought was well suited to that team. So do you believe that there's a match between goalie styles and team playing styles?
I think to a certain extent, more of that, in my opinion, comes from communication than it does from actual goaltending style. I know at the start of the season, I was asking Brian Elliott a couple questions through the guys over at the Athletic Philadelphia, and he was saying that, being able to talk to his defensemen, sort of figure out how they play, what they do, helps out a lot. And then when they passed through Arizona, I didn't get a chance to talk to him because he got hurt in the shootout right before I talked to him. But Shane Gostisbehere gave me a couple words on him, and he said that Elliott's really not afraid to let the players in front of him know when something works with his style, when something doesn't work with his style. So as long as the goaltender, I think, communicates with his team, and whether we like Jonathan Quick or not, it's clear that he is very good at communicating to his team what works for him and what doesn't. I think that probably helps a lot more than the style itself, but to an extent, yeah, I think if a goaltender is overly aggressive and his team doesn't allow him to become a part of those breakout passes, obviously he's not being utilized correctly, and that can hamper his style a bit. So.
All right, we'll take another question.
Hi, Kat. Why do you think, for instance, Antti Niemi has had a rough go this season? I mean, like being put on waivers twice and just bouncing around.
So for Antti Niemi, I think because I watched him at the very start of the season, trying to figure out what was going on, and he was coming completely out of the blue paint. He wasn't tracking the puck correctly. He wasn't moving across his crease in an efficient manner, so he was leaving himself exposed to second shots and, having to throw himself across, make the desperation save, which we know you're less likely to make that desperation save than you are a cleanly executed technical one. So I assumed that was age-related regression. I think once he kind of got his season under him a little bit, he started to warm up, started to be a little bit more consistent. But stuff like that, even if they're a good goaltender to begin with, obviously age can change things, situational uncertainty can change things. Like I said, if a guy's not communicating with his team correctly, or if they're not listening, it's not all entirely on the goaltender. If he's telling them what he needs and they're not responding to it, that can severely affect his numbers a little bit. It could have been some off-season conditioning. With him, it's really hard to tell. I'm not sure why he then took Montreal, especially since Carey Price hasn't been doing as well. But for him in particular, I thought it was a little age-related regression, and then he might have just had his style cleaned up a little bit, or he might have just remembered what he needed to do at this point in his career to start succeeding.
Thanks. All right, just one more question here, and then we'll have to move on to the next session.
I was just curious if there's been any progress on scouting goalies for the draft from an analytical perspective, or if going and watching them play is still far and away the best way to get an understanding of their skills.
I think for the draft, watching them is still going to be the best option, because with those junior goalies, you do have guys who are playing behind teams that are still figuring themselves out. Defenders tend to mature a little bit more slowly. You can end up behind a really stacked team or behind a really poor team. I can't necessarily speak to how many teams are scouting with goaltender-specific scouts who know what they're looking for, other than, the wins and the numbers and how big they look in their crease. But for the most part, when it comes to those young guys, you want to be looking at how they're playing so that you can tell how sustainable they look, how much of their game seems to be developing, if their tracking is improving throughout the season, if their decision making is improving. Because those numbers at the junior level are slightly more likely to block, just because you do have so many young kids around you and you do have so many different talent levels all sort of combined on a team when you're in.
Well, thank you very much, Kat. Thanks for working through all the technical issues with us.
Thanks for sticking with me, guys. Sorry about that.
Thank you. All right, we're just gonna take a couple minutes. We're gonna set up